Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome again to Apologist Assemble. We got over here my friend Felix Benzant and myself, Israel Trujillo. Welcome back, guys. And I know that the title may sound a little bit odd, whether objects exist or whether can a chair exist, can a mouse exist, uh, can like objects exist. It's a little bit odd. I mean, you can say like, of course they exist, but you're gonna see what we mean by this, and we're gonna be exploring a branch of philosophy that is called mereology, and we're pretty excited for that. We're gonna start with a presentation from my friend Felix. By the way, if you speak Spanish, you can go to his YouTube channel. It's called Cree Piensa. My YouTube channel, Sabiduria, Biblica y Apologetica. But okay, welcome, guys, and we're about to begin. How you doing, Felix?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the opportunity. I really wanted to share this presentation. Actually, I know that the title, yeah, it sounds strange, but there's a lot going on in the debate on mereology, and yeah, I'm thrilled to explain what the issue is. But we'll see in due course.
We'll see. Okay, guys. All right, we're gonna start with the presentation, and I'm gonna put it right here. So yeah, the floor is yours, brother.
All right. Let me set up my time here. I don't want to go over 20 minutes. Probably, maybe I can do it in 15 or something.
No, that's cool. I mean, we
Uh,
can see it on the live, like there's the live counter right there, so you can go with that.
yeah. So this presentation is going to be based on an article written by Trent Merrick's. Trent Merrick's is a metaphysician. He's a professor of philosophy at the University of Virginia. And he wrote an article with this same title. Do ordinary objects exist? No. In the book is called Current Controversies in Metaphysics. If you're interested, there's a lively debate in there, contemporary debates in metaphysics. But yeah, we're going to look at his argument in particular. And yeah, we'll see what he means by ordinary objects. What he means by exist, and hopefully you have some questions at the end of the presentation, and we can chat about it. But yeah, as I said, the presentation is going to be based on his article, although not totally, but a great part of the presentation is going to be based on his article. So the issue at hand is mereology. Mereology is the philosophical study of objects and their parts and the relationship between an object and its parts. And initially, the way in which the debate has been generated actually was generated by this philosopher, this great philosopher. Actually, he's a Christian philosopher, Peter Van Inwagen. In the 90s, he came up with a book called Material Beings, and he sort of generated the debate on mereology. And he came up with this question, which is the central question of the presentation, is the question called the special composition question. The special composition question is just a question of when do some x's compose a y? Or under what conditions do some x's compose a y? Or more intuitively, when do some things, say parts of an object, compose a further thing? I put parts of an object in parentheses because I don't want to sound question begging or presupposing the existence of the object in question. But yeah, the special composition question is just a question of when do some objects compose a further object? And it turns out that there are three major answers to this question, to the special composition question. One is mereological nihilism. Mereological nihilism says there's no composition at all. Composition never occurs. And that thesis is taken to entail that, therefore, Since no composition occurs at all, therefore there are no chairs, because chairs are composite objects as we understand them. So if chairs are composite objects and composition doesn't occur, so if we take chairs to be composite objects and composition never occurs, then chairs do not exist. That's like the what the thesis entails for some philosophers, but recent literature are suggesting otherwise. But this is mereological nihilism. No composition never occurs. There's the other position called restrictivism. Restrictivism is taken to be like the common sense view, the view that people normally have, which is the view that yes, chairs are composite objects, chairs exist, but if you stick a chair to a table, you don't get composition there. So there's a chair, a composed object. There's a table, a composite object. But when you put the two together, when you stick them together, you don't get a further object. So that's why it's called restrictivism, because composition is restricted to certain things. There are two views that take this restrictivist approach. One is that composition is restricted to common sense objects, like ordinary objects, tables, chairs, people, etc. But then there are other people like Peter van Inwagen, who says that composition is restricted to biological organisms only. So he'll answer the special composition question by saying the X is composed of Y, if and only if the activities of the X's constitute a life. Whenever you find life in the universe, there's a composite object and that thing exists for Van Inwagen. But otherwise, objects like chairs and tables and stuff like that do not exist for Van Inwagen. So the restrictivist approach comes in these two sort of flavors, so to speak. And then there's the third answer to the special composition question, which says composition always occurs. Composition is unrestricted. That means that, say, the parts of this controller actually composed a controller. But not only that, this controller and myself compose a further object, whatever that is. And this controller and myself and the Eiffel Tower compose a further object. So there's no restriction of composition. Whenever you have two objects in the universe, they compose a further object. So you see the problem. I mean, I don't want to say the problem with this view, because the majority of the philosophers, the great majority of philosophers, take this position. They think unrestricted composition is the right answer to the special composition question. So they think that they have more objects in their ontology than normal people have. So they believe that they're very strange objects existing in the universe. That is, for example, an object, as I said, an object that is composed of me, Felix, this controller, this microphone, and my computer. They compose a further object. That view sounds very strange, but once you look at the argument, you're going to see the power of it. But the presentation is going to be based on a sort of mereological nihilism. So I'm not defending universalism or unrestricted composition. I'm going to be not defending, but presenting mereological nihilism. And one of the reasons why some people adopted these seemingly radical views like mereological nihilism and universalism is because the restrictivist view, the view that normal people have, actually has a lot of problems. It has so many problems that most philosophers have rejected that view. They either take mereological nihilism or else take universalism or unrestricted composition. But okay, so we're gonna see Marx's argument for a sort of mereological nihilism, sort of, and it's gonna be based on what I will call what he calls actually a redundancy principle. But we'll see what that means. But so he's gonna start his paper by saying, let's consider this object called pair, an object an object that is composed of a glove and a right hand glove. Obviously, ordinary people don't believe that pairs exist, although they refer to pairs as if it was one object. When I say, for example, pass me that pair of gloves, I'm talking in the singular, as if there was an object composed of both gloves. But even though we speak like that, that doesn't mean that we believe that there's an object called pair. So what Merrick is going to do, he's gonna use our intuitions that there's no pair, there's no object that we can call pair, and he's gonna use that intuition to prove that, or to suggest rather, that ordinary objects do not exist. So let's start by naming the gloves. Left hand glove, let's name it lefty. Right hand glove, righty. And let's ask ourselves if pair exists. Although we don't normally believe that pair exists. Although universalist philosophers or unrestricted, those who endorse the unrestricted composition would say that pair actually exists. But let's consider, Maris is going to present 3 arguments for the existence of pair, but then he's going to refute those arguments to show us at the end a principle that we can use to deny the existence of other objects. So let's start. 3 arguments that are pretty bad, but we're gonna discover, a principle behind our rejection of those arguments. So first argument for the existence of pair. Yesterday I was in the cold and my hands stayed warm. Lefty didn't cause that because lefty only kept my left hand warm. Righty didn't cause that because righty kept only my right hand warm. But surely something caused my hands, both of them, to stay warm. Pair is the obvious candidate. Nothing can keep both my hands warm unless it exists, so pair exists. Now, obviously, Merrick is going to say this is a terrible argument. Why is it terrible? Well, because I can explain entirely why my hands are warm without the need to posit the existence of this mysterious object called pair. I can explain it. I can explain why my hands are warm with lefty and righty working together. I don't need that object pair in order to explain what needs to be explained, which is my hands getting warm. So this is a terrible argument for the existence of pair. Now let's consider a second argument for the existence of pair. Say something like, I put lefty and righty on a scale which registered a weight of 12 ounces, but lefty weighs in at a mere 6 ounces and righty also weighs in at a mere 6 ounces. So neither lefty nor righty caused the scale to register 12 ounces. But surely something caused the scale to register 12 ounces. Pair is the obvious candidate. Only existing things can cause a scale to register weight, so pair exists. And obviously, Merrick is going to say this is also a terrible argument. Why? Because I can explain why the scale is registering 12 ounces without the need to posit the existence of this mysterious object named pair. I can do so by appealing to lefty and righty working together, or the weight of lefty combined with the weight of righty explains why the scale is registering 12 ounces. So this is a terrible argument for the existence of pair. And I think everyone would agree, except universalists, as I said. So let's consider the final argument for the existence of pair, which is also a bad argument. I seem to see pair, and so do you. Just look, pair. That's a kind of argument that people can bring. Third premise, only existing things can cause visual experiences, so pair exists. And this is obviously a bad argument as well, because the fact that you can seem to see something doesn't necessarily implies that that thing exists. For example, if I give a hug to someone, some third person might seem to see an individual with 2 heads, 4 legs, and 4 arms. But the fact that he seems to see an individual with 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 heads doesn't mean that that individual exists. It's just that I'm hugging someone. even though that may seem to some other person like it's an individual, just an individual person there. So yeah, the fact that you seem to see something doesn't necessarily implies that that thing exists. So this is a terrible argument for the existence of pair as well. Now, what can we learn from this, from our rejection of these three arguments? Well, Merrick's is going to say that this proves that pair is actually causally redundant. So what do we mean by causally redundant? We mean that pair doesn't produce any effects, because all the effects, all the purported effects that we talked about, my hands getting warm and so on, those effects can be entirely explained without the need to posit the existence of pair. So pair turns out to be causally redundant. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't cause anything. And since it doesn't cause anything, it's considered to be a overdeterminer, because it doesn't do anything above and beyond the causal powers of the two things that compose it. So let's just focus on causal redundancy. Let's forget about causal overdetermination, because it's similar. It's very similar. But causal redundancy. So according to Merrick's, we discover that pair does not exist on the basis of a causal principle, that pair doesn't cause anything. It doesn't cause any effects. In order to give you an example of redundancy and possibly of overdetermination, we may ask, for example, how many things are there? You might say it's one thing, it's a pizza, right? But then what if I divide the pizza into 5 parts? You might say there's still a pizza, but there's 5 slices. Or put another way, you can say, oh, there's some amount of pepperoni, some amount of cheese, some amount of tomato sauce, and some amount of the bread or whatever. So the question is, how many things are there? Because if you say that there's a pizza and there's also 5 slices and there's also pepperoni, cheese, and sauce and whatever, then it seems like you're overcounting things. Because the pizza presumably already includes the ingredients and all the other stuff. So it seems like you're overcounting things, and that's why we appeal to this principle of causal redundancy or overdetermination, because it seems like we are overcounting things when we ask whether a pizza exists, and also whether the things that compose the pizza exist too. Then it seems like we have more objects than we need. So yeah, that's the issue. Now, Merrick's derives the conclusion that pair does not exist, or he doesn't want to say it like that pair does not exist, but suggests that we shouldn't believe in the existence of pair. So this is the principle. Many of you might be familiar with the principle of parsimony, also called the Occam's razor, which says that we shouldn't posit the existence. We shouldn't multiply entities beyond necessity. And from this principle, we get this parsimonious principle that we should deny the existence of those alleged physical objects that would be of necessity wholly causally redundant. Seems like that's the principle by which we rejected the existence of pair in the 3 arguments that we considered, is because we shouldn't believe in those things that are causally redundant, that those things that don't cause anything. So on the basis of this principle is that he sort of constructs his argument against ordinary objects. Like, for example, he's going to say, well, if that principle is correct, that we should deny the existence of those objects that are causally redundant, then it seems like we can also deny the existence of lefty or righty. Like, for example, consider this argument. Suppose righty exists. Righty or lefty, whatever, is composed of a leather shell, call it S, a wool lining L, and some thread T. So righty is composed of S, L, and T. but their alleged effects can be further explained by S, L, and T working together. And Merrick says, well, this gets us to the conclusion that neither lefty nor righty exist either, because we don't need lefty in order to explain why my hand is warm. I can do so completely by virtue of S, L, and T working together, the things that compose lefty or righty. So it seems like we apply the same principle that we apply to against pair. We can apply it also to lefty and also to righty. So if we have reasons to deny the existence of pair, then we have reasons to deny the existence of lefty and righty. Furthermore, we can actually apply that same principle to S, L, and T, the things that compose lefty or righty. Because of the same principle, S, L, or T, working in concert, working together, are mere causal overdeterminers because their alleged effects can be explained by the existence of more basic objects working in concert. So applying the same principle, we get that neither S or L or T exist, or at least we shouldn't believe that those objects exist, according to the principle that we derived. So you might be wondering then, what is it that exists? For mereological nihilists, it's simples. Whatever that means, it doesn't have to be something concrete or particular. It's just whatever it is that doesn't have proper parts. Say subatomic particles, if they turn out to not have proper parts, or according to Merrick's, or composites with causal powers. So Merrick's is saying, if you get a bunch of simples, say let's call them atoms, a bunch of atoms that together have causal power, then yes, that object that object actually exists. But if it doesn't have any causal power, like pair or lefty or righty, then that object do not exist, according to the principle of redundancy. So for Merrick's, only simples exist and a few composites. But then that means that chairs do not exist, planets do not exist, your house does not exist, your car does not exist. What exists is just simples arranged in that way. So I've tried to explain this explain this argument to some people, and they'd be like, "Well, I'm sitting in a chair right now, so a chair must exist if I'm sitting in it." Yeah, but the mereological nihilist is going to say, "No, you're not sitting in a chair. You're sitting in a bunch of simples arranged in the form of a chair." So the argument is not that you're not sitting in a chair when you're actually, I don't know, having dinner or whatever. The argument is that you're not sitting in one thing. There's no one thing there. It's just a bunch of simples arranged in that fashion. So that's the argument, basically. And this argument helps to solve many contemporary and ongoing debates. It explains a bunch of paradoxes in metaphysics, especially paradoxes that are very old, like 2,000 years old. Which one example is the Hypothesis paradox. I'm not going to explain it here. Maybe if we want to go into it, I can explain it later. But I think that's all for now. Maybe we can just discuss the merits of the argument. Why is it good? Why is it bad? Which view we should accept, and so on, and what the problems are with each view, because each view has some problems. So we are in a predicament here. We are in a dilemma. So yeah, that's pretty much the argument that Merrick brings to the table.
Okay, that was pretty cool. Thank you, Felix. And of course, I'm gonna have a bunch of questions on that, but I guess we can start with what is your view of metaphysics? What do you think about propositions, about the existence of abstract objects, about truth itself, like what is truth, and I guess if you can explain to us whether you have a metaphysical view like Platonism or like idealism or some other view.
Well, with respect to truth, I endorse the correspondence theory of truth. Um, I think propositions are. Some philosophers say that propositions are entities, abstract entities. I'm not sure about that. So my view is pretty much open with respect to, say, propositions. I don't know if, yeah, I don't know if math can be said to exist, if propositions can be said to exist, or yeah,
Okay, well, I guess we're going to start a little bit of that. I think this is super crucial to meteorology, I believe, because so, for example, as me as an idealist, I would say, of course, that propositions exist as abstract objects, mathematical objects, numbers, everything. So so yeah, I believe all these entities exist, and as an idealist, in the idealist position, you say that that is everything that exists. So you're not just saying that they exist somewhere, but you're saying that all of reality reduces to ideas in a sense. And I guess you could ask the same question. Okay, but I mean, we see objects, we see a world, we see a planet, we see a world. So how is it the case that you only believe that ideas exist, and yet we see the normal world as, yeah, the world as we see it? So for example, there's an argument called the digital physics argument. I don't have the syllogism right now, but pretty much it tries to argue that it works a little bit kind of like as in a video game, where in a video game it is all about code. So however you code the situation, let's say someone's trying to lift a rock or push a door, whatever, is going to have coding so that it appears heavy for the person, or that he cannot cross some material objects, or like having freedom where there's no material objects, jumping, whatever laws of physics that you want to put into the game. So you want to say that it is not like what we are saying is that not that real things exist or that objects exist, but what the idealist is trying to say is that they exist, however, as ideas. And so you would say, but okay, how do we reduce it to ideas? And the thing is that in philosophy, is extremely problematic to reduce something to a material object. Always, when you're trying to explain a material object, you get to some dead ends. So what idealism does is that we argue that you are getting to dead ends because you mostly can only well, it seems to be the case that we can reduce them to descriptions. So if you can reduce it to descriptions, to equations, to physical laws, then those are ideas. So it will be reduced to ideas. So we would say that everything it's coding in a sense. And when you see, for example, the in the applicability of mathematics, like when what's interesting is that some scientists have tried to graph fractal equations and see how they see graph in a supercomputer. So they try it out and they graph them, and it appears like those fractal equations graphed, they become things that we see in the real world. So something like a flower, something like the order of a galaxy, something like even some stuff resembling animals or something, plants. So it is extremely odd that whenever you see fractal equations, which are informationless, so they're abstract entities. So there's nothing in them that is physical. They're simple ideas. However, when you graph them, you seem to get stuff that we observe in the real world. So if everything, so now I'm going straight up to my point where I'm going with idealism, is that if we can, if it seems that we can reduce everything to ideas, it seems to be the simpler explanation, since the other ones will be put as I don't know, or put as we need to keep researching, or pretty much as like still as questions. So it seems to explain the situation. It seems to correspond to reality. So in the argument of the applicability of mathematics, it seems like it seems like the mathematics are discovered. Why? Because I mean, it was literally discovered. It was not like, oh yeah, we're gonna try to resemble something that looks like a galaxy or like a flower, and I'm gonna make these mathematics to whatever to resemble them. No, there was literally a discovery of how you graph um, fractal equations. So, and it seems to be the case the same for the universe. Even many secular scientists understand that like they cannot answer the question. They got to stay agnostic on the question, because everything reduces to information. So as they understand, everything reduces to information. So it's kind of hard to make a physicalist argument in this case. So where I'm going with this is, if abstract objects exist, and ideas, it's like all that exists. If we take an idealist position, then something like a share would exist. So it solves a kind of like a linguistic problem on trying to differentiate um, physicalist objects with something metaphysical, such as pair, and such as the components of whatever a pair of gloves is made out of. So if it's all ideas, not just the word pair, but also everything composing the gloves, and also what you call particulars, or individuals. I don't know, not sure how you called it, but whatever those individual things are, those will reduce to ideas too. So if we reduce all those to ideas too, then we wouldn't have a problem of saying one does not exist because the other one can exist. And it will give more merit to such a thing as the word pair. So that's why I think it's extremely crucial to have a view of metaphysics, to see how you're gonna be understanding mereology once you combine the two, because it's gonna affect greatly, as we already talked about. Because if the existence of pair is telling us, it's asking us how does that exist ontologically. So if it exists ontologically as ideas in idealism, um, and a share is an idea, we could say that a share exists, we can say that a pair exists, and we could say that a pizza exists. So we would boil it down to universalist mereology in that sense. I don't know if you want to comment something, Felix.
Yeah, so I suppose that idealism is a way around this problem. I think, yeah, maybe idealists won't have this problem. Although I'm curious as to because the argument, one of the premises of Merrick's argument is that we shouldn't believe in the existence of objects that are causally redundant. I suppose that if a chair, it's ultimately an idea, then it would be causally redundant. Is that a view that idealists take? So if a chair is an idea doesn't have causal powers, or does it have causal powers? Can an idea cause something?
That's an interesting question, actually. So let me see. That's odd. Honestly, I'm quite new in idealism. I probably just adopted it like like 3 weeks ago, maybe a month. But I would say yeah, yeah, because causality is an idea in and of itself. So causality, we wouldn't say it's a physicalist phenomenon. So if causality is an idea, is how you call a relationship, I would guess it causality would exist. So yeah, I would say that there is such a thing as causality, and uh, yeah, I would say it will get a little bit into linguistics on how we pretty much organize linguistically some phenomenon occurring together, um, which I would guess it'll be interesting if we could plug in the problem of the one of the many and see how it plays out in mereology. You're probably familiar with the problem of the one of the many, right?
Right, right. And actually, that's one of the reasons why I endorsed meological nihilism for quite some time. Not anymore though. But the problem of the many and the Shipothesis paradox and all these paradoxes in metaphysics are the reasons why I wanted to find a way to sort of systematically solve them. And I found mereological nihilism to be a perfect um, a perfect answer to the all these problems and puzzles. So that's one reason why I endorse mereological nihilism. But nowadays, I sort of combine mereological nihilism with another thesis, which I'm doing some research about, which is the emergence, this phenomenon called emergence, as when you have, for example, physical objects, but then out of those physical objects something emerges, like a property that's not found in the objects themselves. One example would be life, how life is generated from, if it's generated from matter, how matter can produce life, which is a sort of emergence. And in the same way, how human beings made out of flesh and bones generate consciousness. Those are emergent properties, and it seems like you get emergent properties even in physical objects themselves. Like for example, you see a picture, someone draw some I don't know, a picture or something, and you seem to have when you look at a picture, you seem to have an experience that cannot be explained in terms of the individual things that make up the picture. So maybe emergence is going on even in the world of inanimate objects. So that's why I'm trying to do some research on emergence and see if I can combine it with a mereological nihilist thesis and sort of give an answer to the special composition question that it's not counterintuitive. Because one of the problems with mereological nihilism is that it seems counterintuitive. It seems counterintuitive to say that chairs do not exist. And the other position, which is universalism, is very counterintuitive too, because it says that a whole bunch of objects that our intuitions do not recognize actually exist. Like, for example, an object composed of me in the Eiffel Tower. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that there's an object composed of me in the Eiffel Tower. But then nihilism seems like a radical view too. So I'm trying to find a way to sort of combine a
Yeah, let me
view.
jump in on that because I would say that's actually extremely useful, and we're going to see it used like all the time with every object whenever we make a new invention. So, for example, if there is, so for example, we see a cup, and we see one device that kind of has a like a hook with a hanger on top where the cup goes, uh, and you look at those two objects, you can make the same reasoning and say that, well, I don't want those two objects to be one. I mean, like that's weird. But no, I mean, there's an invention where there's this thing which is a hook with a hanger where you put the cup so that whenever you're walking, like it doesn't like it keeps the inertia like going for the liquid and for the cup itself. So they make this invention in order that you can even be running, you can be in a treadmill, and you're not going to drop a drop of coffee. Like you're not going to drop your whatever you're drinking because of these objects. So if you put it in a separate objects, you can have this objective thing that you say, oh well, that would be weird. However, when you put them together, let's say that you make not one of those hangers, but with a cup integrated to it, now it would become an object in and of itself, and it would make sense. And we would say that there's a lot of words that they use in other languages that we don't use, um, or a lot of things that they describe that we don't describe the same way. In some tribes, they have different amounts of colors. For example, they could give a name to like seven shades of green. Well, we would just say green, or maybe light green and, and dark green or something like that. And let's say they may have another object, or they may describe the object in a different way. So I would say it is extremely useful to make it the case that yeah, you can combine objects and make it a new object. Because I mean, if you know about the inventions that we have right now that we didn't have before, thousands of years before, you could say that many of them it's combining different types of objects in and of themselves and making a new one, and it helps with language. So I mean, if they don't exist, so it would make it a little bit redundant, or not redundant. Sorry, a little bit unusual to say something that doesn't exist and use it in language the whole time. And that is one of the biblical problems, I would say, you will have. So, for example, if Jesus said that he's the bread of life, so he's a non-existent thing of life. If God said to name all the animals, like for Adam to name all the animals, I mean to name nothing. So name like non-existent things. So it seems like the Bible seems to assume universalist mereology. So, what would you say are the repercussions in real life linguistics to have the idea that those objects don't exist? Because if we take my case, so for example, if you say that, of course, God is a corporeal, it's a being, it's a mind. Mind is ideas. He's omnipresent. So you expect to see ideas everywhere. So it kind of seems consistent with the ontology of God to have everything being ideas. And now, if everything are ideas, and it's telling you that okay, these whatever biological composition we call these groups animals, and let's say we call this animal a dog, and we call these piece of wheat baked and everything, we call it a bread, and it's supposing it exists. I mean, in order to have the analogy to work. So it seems that the Bible presupposes universalist mereology. Um, and it seems to be consistent with the ontology of God. So, what would you say is the repercussions on real life linguistics, and how would that play out with the ontology of God and maybe biblical revelation? What would you say about it?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Although the question has to be, the ontological question has to be separated, sort of separated from the linguistic question, because you can believe that an object exists, but just conventionally, it because we gave a name to something, and conventionally use that name to refer to it, but that doesn't necessarily imply the ontological thing that there actually exists an object there. So yeah, I'm not so much concerned with language. I mean, I'm fine if we want to refer to things as one, even if they are not one. I'm more concerned with whether or not they are actually one. Um, but some philosophers who endorse, for example, mereological nihilism would try they often try to find a paraphrase so that their view doesn't sound too counterintuitive. Like, for example, since they don't believe that chairs exist, they'd say something like, "Well, when we talk about a chair, we're actually talking about a bunch of symbols arranged chair wise, they say, or table wise. Uh, so they would say, for example, when it comes to I don't know, Jesus talking about some bread, they will paraphrase that and say, well, he's talking about a bunch of simples arranged bread wise. So that's kind of the way, the linguistic way in which they try to uh, frame mereological nihilism so that it doesn't sound counterintuitive. But yeah, I'm not so sure about what to say concerning the relationship between or the repercussions of adopting some mereological view with the Bible, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we get to a problem whether odds exist, because it seems that kind of like to make an ontological connection with a linguistic connection, I think it maybe it requires the existence of odds, maybe because so if whatever composition ought to be called a share, if we say that odds exist, then it would ought to be called a share if it ought. So of course there should be something about why it ought to be called a share, but I would say that would make it easier if we can derive odds from somewhere. So it's a little bit difficult to derive odds, and that is a huge problem in philosophy, and that's kind of why usually the philosophy of ethics, of of morality. Usually, I would say that one of the hardest things to deal with is um, it's moral irrealism, and one of the things about moral irrealism is that it hinges upon a whole case, basically saying that it is hard for anyone to actually derive odds whatsoever. So they will pose this problem. So I guess it's a little bit hard to solve, to be honest. But how I try to do it is so first I appeal to a metaphysical existence. So if we're talking about idealism and all that exists are abstract things, ideas, etc., and oddness is it's an idea. It exists somehow, and so all we got to say for odds to exist is that it somehow corresponds to reality. So it's going to be hard for someone with a metaphysical idea of some form of physicalism or emergence to actually call for the existence of odds. So it is a problem for anyone with a kind of a physicalist kind of thing and how you connect um, ideas with physical things. So it'll be a little bit difficult for those type of guys. With that, I assume that you're one of those guys. However, for an idealist position, you would say that ideas exist. Moral odds are an idea. Therefore, odds exist. So we would say in how do we know it's true, and now we get to theories of truth, and also agree with the correspondence theory of truth. So I would say that the all we got to show is that odds existing corresponds to reality. So I guess we'll have to prove idealism, and if we prove idealism, we could prove that odd exists because odds corresponds to reality because everything in reality is ideas. So and if and now let's grant for a second that idealism is true and that odds exist, then it means that we can make something like a share if God says if God says that animals exist, that a share exists, that bread exists, then they exist. I would say because there are odds there, and I would say that God is the not just the owner but reality itself. Like God composes of reality by being omnipresent. So I would say you can kind of drive odds from God, and if we have it in Revelation, we would say we have some grounds to say that something like an abstract object exists. Well, like a share, like whatever pair. Or if you want to give some thoughts on that.
So yeah, I'm wondering because I don't know all the implications of idealism. Um, like for example, when I read Barclay a long time ago, which endorses the view that endorses idealism, the view that only ideas exist. Sometimes I don't know if so. There are no physical source of our ideas, correct? If you're an idealist, it's just ideas.
Yeah,
That's
just ideas.
in reality, there's just ideas. So there are no material objects.
Hmm.
Yeah, I find that view a little
Well,
hard
I would
to.
say material objects are ideas. So we would say that material objects exist, but they exist as ideas. We would say it's a category. It's a category of ideas. That's what I would say.
Yeah. One thing that can be useful. Actually, I use this approach. Some philosophers use the notion of reductionism or reduction differently than, like, for example, when by reduction they mean an eliminativist thesis. Like for example, if the mind reduces to the brain, you're basically saying there's no mind. But other reductionists would endorse like an identifying reductionism, which says, well, the mind is just the brain, like an identity theory. And those two are reductionist, supposedly, but they say different things. And then there's the third kind of reductionism, which is like minds. They are minds, but they're fundamentally grounded in the brain, which is somewhat different from the other two. So whenever I hear the term reductionism, I'm trying to wonder which kind of reductionism the person is endorsing. Because so I would categorize it as identifying reductionism. You identifying something with something else. Material objects are just ideas. That would be a kind of identifying reductionism. Then there's the eliminative reductionism when you say, "Oh no, there are no material objects. They're just ideas." So that would be another kind of reductionism. And then there's the reductionism that says that uses sort of a grounding or supervenience relation, which says, "Well, material objects or vice versa. Material objects are grounded in ideas, or ideas are grounded in material objects, um, or something like that." And that would be a different kind of reductionism. So I don't know in which kind of reductionism you fall on the what
Well,
kind of.
I would say just ideas. All that exists is ideas. But I would say a challenge I would pose to your perspective. So you're saying that you're kind of flirting with emergence. So if you endorse emergence, that means that abstract ideas are emerging from something that is it is not an idea. So if like a non-idea would be something like material. So you would say that that material things exist, and you would kind of have a I don't know if a Platonistic. I don't know how Platonistic you could be, but maybe even nothing. It could be the case that from the description I'm getting, maybe you could be like a physicalist or something. But I think it is important to see if something as us exists or as truths exist, because you have to be. Kind of like have a sort of a Platonist view, because you're saying that it is true that no objects exist. So if you make the claim, no, it is true that no objects exist, then you have to explain where you get truth from. So you will have to pose a form where you say that truth is something in and of itself, because if you have something as a pure proposition with something that doesn't emerge from some material object, so I can make whatever proposition that just, or even make an analogy where we assume that that material objects don't exist, and I just ask you to say how is the statement true. you have to make it true somehow. And if you have nothing to emerge it from, I would say that it is a big problem. So I guess my question for you is, how do you bring the existence of truth in and of itself? Like, what is it if it's emergent? What is emerging from? Can you tell me what do you think truths are?
Uh, I'm not sure I can spell it out. I just truth for me is what corresponds with reality. So if reality is in a certain way, then ultimately in a certain way, then that is true, or truth. Um, so in my view, I don't believe that matter doesn't exist. I only believe that, for example, chairs do not exist, because chairs are ultimately just symbols arranged in a certain way, and those symbols are material. So my view of emergence is just saying that emergence results from physicals arranged in a certain way. It might include some guiding principle, because I don't think matter is capable of doing that by itself. So that's I sort of have I sort of have an argument for the existence of God based on emergence, but I don't want to I don't want to talk about it here. But yeah, so I think matter can't generate emergent phenomenon by itself. Um, but I think that ultimately phenomenon emergent phenomena are grounded in symbols arranged in a certain way. So when it comes to biological organisms, for example, that's emergence operating there, and emergence might be sort of, I don't know if I should call it an abstract thing or whatever it is. I just know it's happening in the real world. But yeah.
And but how does truth emerges from simple things? So how you get truth? So you're saying it corresponds to reality, but if we do a statement like it is true that neurological analysis is true, um, how is that statement emerging from symbols? How is truth and the statement that has a quality truth in and of itself? So how would that emerge from symbols?
I just think that truth is a um,
Well, not just how it would emerge, but you're saying it corresponds to reality. You're saying something is true because it corresponds to reality. But what reality is it corresponding true? What is it emerging from? So, yeah, I'm asking where does it where is the correspondence on that in the statement?
so are you talking about reality per se, or are you talking about uh, sort of propositions about reality?
Well, I mean, I guess we're talking about propositions because the if we're saying the statement it is true that neurological nihilism is true, then that is corresponding to reality if you want to argue that. So, what thing in reality is it corresponding to? And you would say that it corresponds in a sense of emergence. So, you would say that that emerges somehow from simple. So, I don't know if you could explain like how is that emergence happening and what is the corresponding to, like to what reality or how?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Although I don't think I have an answer to that. Although, as I said, I don't believe that propositions are actual things. Um, and I think when we refer to a statement that is true, we're using our cognitive faculties derived from reason itself, but not necessarily something that actually exists. So I don't think propositions exist. I don't think I'm not sure about abstract objects. Uh, and yeah, I don't know if I can answer your question about what emergence. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe I don't even know if
yeah.
I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yeah, no, like honestly, it's like super difficult. Like I don't even blame you. Like philosophers has been struggling with that for a long time. So yeah, it's kind of hard to answer. But well, what I think we should definitely solve if we're going to appeal to mereological analysis, well, in your case, I think you should definitely provide an account of metaphysical object. How do they exist? How do ideas actually exist? And let's say I wouldn't know how to solve it from your position either, but let's say I propose my position. So we do a inference to the best explanation comparison. We compare our two different hypotheses, and it would be kind of hard to give it explanatory power and explanatory scope without an idealist position, like having a physicalist way and bringing, like from emergence. I don't know what the implications of explanatory power and scope would be for that. I guess you could get me in the sense of a chord, like how it chords to commonly held beliefs, because idealism is not very intuitive, and it's a minority, like honestly. So I guess your position would kind of get me on a chord, but explanatory power and scope, I guess I don't see how it can explain things. So yes, it can pose problems. It can solve maybe a paradox or two, but in by solving a couple paradoxes, if you break the like the existence of propositions and ideas, that I would say that is massive, because you would have to have something as love, as truth, as repentance, as a yeah, as a logic, logos, because I mean Christ is claiming to be the logos. So if if logic is something that does not exist, so God does not exist. Or if you say that, okay, so it reduces, like we don't have something as a one in many. We don't have I don't know what would you say it's your view of the one in the many, but it would make something like God, because God is one in many, to not exist if something is not true just because it's one in many, like a pizza, or like a share, because it's a composition and it's one in many at the same time. So if we take it to the right conclusion, it would kind of follow that something as one in many as God would not exist. And in my position, I wouldn't have that idea. I could hold to one in many in the to Christ being the logos, being logic, and logic existing, truth, life, etc., existing. And I would say the Bible would be much more consistent in my view. But maybe you can tell me a little bit of how you solve the God question with that.
Well, as I said, I don't think my position has the problem of the many. Uh, yeah, precisely. Yeah, I actually endorse that position because it evades the problem of the many. So I wouldn't have an object co-located, so to speak, with other objects, uh, which is one of the reasons why I sort of endorse mereological nihilism. But what was your question about?
I guess maybe I'm confused. Maybe I'm just not understanding your view correctly. But so how would you say that God is one in many at the same time? So you're saying that if I get you correctly, that there's no many, there's just one. So you would say that God is just one and not many. So so how do you get persons out of that if God is just one and not many? That would kind of make you Unitarian in a way, or you would say there's some other loophole that you got, or
Oh
how
no
do
no.
you?
Yeah, I probably misunderstood you. Um, so the problem of the many that I'm solving is just the problem of the many with respect to physical objects. Um, because physical objects are claimed to be by philosophers are claimed to be co-located with other objects. Like for example, take a statue and a lump of clay which you turn into a statue. There's the problem of two objects sort of co-locating, occupying the same space, which is the statue itself and and the lump of clay. Uh, so it seems like you have two objects occupying the same space there. In my view, you don't have that problem. That's all I'm saying. But when it comes to God, we're not talking about material objects, and actually we're talking about different ideas like person and stuff like that. So I wouldn't I do endorse the view that God is three persons in one, because nothing contradicts uh, the other. Like a person and being a God doesn't necessarily contradict each other. We're talking about different notions. It's just with physical objects that I see problems endorsing co-location or something like that.
Yeah, it's just that I don't know if the problem can go all the way to God itself because okay, so if God is not material, which we agree, and you're saying that the most of the problem is material, but you're saying that non-material things are emergent. I guess you wouldn't say that God is emergent, but God has to have some form of metaphysical existence in a sense, some form of existence that is not physical. So what would you say is that existence in yeah, I'm not sure if you're getting me.
Yeah, no, because my view, as I said, my view of emergence is sort of based on physical things. I don't see any problems with. I don't think God is an emergent anything. He's not an
Hmm.
emergent property or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I don't even know what he is. I can't think of it. I'm like Aquinas who says whatever we know about God is from negative theology about what he is not.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. So, for example, if you ask me about the Trinity, of course, I can give a an explanation of what it's not, and very, very, very few things of what it is. And saying what it is, it's pretty easy to get into a heresy. Like there's so many trip minds out there to catch a heresy that many people just decide to just not even try it. But yeah, I agree with you that it's usually better to explain theology by what it's not. But I would say the problem is that we can get it to a true dichotomy. So the law of excluded middle, pretty much. So if we say that there's only two options, either God is physical or non-physical, I guess we got a dichotomy right there, and we you adhere to the proposition that God is not physical, so God must be non-physical. So now that we know that God must be non-physical, um, I guess how would you describe the how it corresponds to reality in his non-physical manner? But yeah.
uh, so you're saying if I endorse the correspondence theory of truth, how I can believe that God exists even if he's not material, given that.
Well, I believe the correspondence theory truth of truth, but I would say I believe it with transcendental argumentation. Um, and transcendental argumentation requires the existence of God. So I would say there's more arguments on transcendental argumentation, but I guess we'll leave that for some other time. But I'm not saying that correspondence is the problem. I would say it's more of a question like how does God correspond to reality in your position if you believe it is not emergent from something, you believe it is non-physical, so kind of like how would God exist, like I'm guessing more about ontology. It's because so in my view, if God is a mind, God is ideas, it is like there is a metaphysical existence that all that exists is ideas, and that would make sense as God is omnipresent and God is a mind, a conjunction of ideas with a sense of of agency and personhood. So I would say it is more easier for my idealist view, but yeah, I just don't get it from your position. I guess your position would be what I kind of have trouble with, but it is a hard question, man. I know it can be pretty difficult. So maybe we can change the topic if you want, because I got other cool questions that maybe you can help me with, because I
Yeah,
struggle a little bit to solve it.
yeah. Let me just ask you this last question just to see if I'm
Sure.
understanding you correctly. So what you're asking is, so if God is a ultimately his mind is ideas, you're asking how he created a universe that is material from ideas. Is that sort of the way you're going, or no?
No, because you attribute metaphysical existence to emergence. So, how is it the case that something beyond physical as God um, is not emergent, but everything else is emergent? So that's kind of like where I'm asking, where I'm going.
Yeah. Although, like I said, I only believe emergence happens in a few, not to all objects, but to a few objects. It's not like whenever you have two objects, you have emergence. What I mean is, in certain circumstances, you have emergence. Like for example, when you have matter and then you have life, or when you have life and then you have consciousness. Otherwise, I'm not sure about whether or not emergence is occurring. Um, so this chair is not an emergent anything. This chair in which I'm sitting in,
Mm.
but my consciousness is an emergent property of my, say, my brain or something like that. But it's not my view that for every object in the universe there's emergence. So it's just emergence is restricted to certain objects in particular, say human beings or organisms, or perhaps some other, I don't know, some other uh, objects, but I'm not sure about the rest.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because I mean, if you're saying that shareness does not exist, the property of being a share, so I guess it will have to be explicitly just mental, just about your consciousness itself. So, okay, that part makes sense, but I guess we'll still have some questions that are quite hard for everybody, but pretty much. But yeah, I guess we should move to a last part, just something personal that I've been trying so hard to try to learn. Um, so, okay, in Latin America, there's a huge debate. It's everybody, everywhere in apologetics, it's about Theotokos, which is Mary, the God bearer. If Mary is the mother of God. So, we're talking about the Council of Ephesus. Well, it's more Christological, of course, everybody would say that, but from that Christological conclusion from the Council of Ephesus, um, they kind of like the Catholic Church dogmatized later on that Mary is the mother of God. So I want to explore like uh, because I would say the main problem could be mereological and it could be linguistic on how can we attribute motherhood, the motherhood relation. So the thing is that they try to make Catholics try to make a well, some Protestants too. There's a lot of Protestants, especially in the Reformed camp, that say that yes, Mary is the mother of God, and I don't buy it. I don't think that's the case. And the syllogism they use is okay. So Mary is the mother of Jesus. Jesus is God. Therefore, Mary is the mother of Jesus. So I mean, therefore, Mary is the mother of God. So what I'm trying to explore is how we attribute labels onto composition. So if in mereology, of course, there's a merological relation between Jesus being God and not being Father, not being the Holy Spirit. So there's a difference between those two, but they conform we know as God. I'm not making ontological claims on how that happens. I'm just making linguistic distinctions on how we distinguish persons from the being. So I want to say, what is the application of a linguistic claim such as motherhood when someone like Jesus shares the property of being God? And we just say that motherhood applies to the property of godness, or would just apply to the property Jesus?
Yeah, I think this is so, as you said, I think this is so linguistic and conventional. I mean, if the Catholics, I hope the Catholics are not trying to derive an ontological sort of claim about the motherhood of Mary from this fact, because I mean, I take it to be, and I assume that they took it to be linguistic. The fact that Mary is the mother of Jesus. I mean, the mother of God or whatever. I took that to be a linguistic or conventional thing. Now, if they want to imply that that's not just conventional or linguistic, but also ontological, that seems to be, you can derive a contradiction out of that. So I don't know how they can.
Like, what kind of contradiction? How do you draw a contradiction for that?
Let me think. So if Mary is the mother of Jesus and Jesus is God, then Mary was the mother of God, but Mary depends. The existence of Mary depends on the existence of God. So there's either a contradiction or a circularity. I'd say a circularity.
I guess you're talking about contingents, and I would say that's extremely important, and that's one of the arguments that I'm trying to say. For example, the problem is that which linguistic convention we use, in the sense that how we understand the property, the label of motherhood, usually involves contingency. So, whatever the property of sonhood connects to the property of motherhood, the son is contingent upon the material, or the, I guess, whatever the ontological thing of a mother is. So if we say the mother of, I think in part of the definition of motherhood implies uh, uh, the this whoever has the property sonness it's contingent upon whoever gets the property motherhood. So if you say Jesus, in order to have the his material reality, as you gotta admit that he is fully man and fully God. If not, you get into a heresy. You would say that the material part of Jesus, the human part of Jesus, was contingent upon Mary. However, the you cannot say that God is contingent on Mary, because God, by definition, is a necessary being. It cannot be contingent. That's the whole point of the contingency argument for the existence of God. However, what Catholics say when you say that is that yeah, but you're committing the Nestorian heresy. You're trying to separate the the human nature of Jesus from the godly nature of Jesus, and since you are separating them, then you are making a heresy. So, but the thing is that I would say it is more about linguistics of that. Whenever, like, motherhood, as we know it linguistically, it refers to being matter being contingent from whoever has the ontology of mother. So we would say it's more linguistic. So since we already have that linguistic consensus on the properties of motherhood, the I would say the Catholic seems to be changing the linguistic convention in order to fit Mary, Mother of God. Um, So I would say it's changing the convention. I would say it's making a new convention, and that's what I have a problem with, because I don't think I'm making ontological claims that that the humanness of Jesus is separate from the godness of Jesus. Yeah, why? Because there's a hypostatic union. So you deny the hypostatic union if you separate them both. So I'm not separating them. I'm just making ontological claims, and I'm sorry. I'm not making ontological claims. I'm just making linguistic attributions correctly. So how we attribute properties to different situations. So I don't know if we can do the same thing. Let's say we do it with a square or a triangle. So let's say the square on the board is contingent on the guy that drew it. However, so the square depends of the whoever drew it in order to exist. However, you can only attribute the existence of the square on the board only to the mature part. So he only brought the shock or whatever he used to draw it. He only took that material and arranged it in a way that now corresponds to whatever a square is. However, you wouldn't say that the drawer made the metaphysical square, or what we understand as square, because squares existed before the square on the board existed. So that's kind of what I'm trying to argue. It's not about ontological claims. It's more about how you attribute labels. In this case, drawing. Uh, you attribute the drawing to the only to the physical representation of the square on the board, rather than the whole metaphysical thing emerging into existence and calling it like he drew the metaphysical square. He drew the physical square, I would say. I don't know if there's a you see a problem with that.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that this issue of motherhood and stuff like that turned into a metaphysical debate. I wasn't aware of that. um, but whatever. Yeah, I think it's mostly linguistics. Although when you were referring to drawing a triangle or a square, which is contingent on whoever drew it. Uh, yeah, I think I agree with that. It's just that I don't call anything a square in the actual world. uh, that's just a mental sort of representation of our idea of what a square must look like. But I don't think there's no I don't think there are squares in our in physical reality.
Yeah,
But
I would say you can make a sentence like I drew a square. However, like it could mean different things. It could be I drew the representation of a square.
right.
However, if you say I drew a square as the idea of a square, no, I don't think you do draw a square. So the word draw has to have logical limitations on how you put that label drew. You can only put it to the physical representation, and you cannot put it to the idea itself. I would say that's how the linguistic consensus is on how we describe the the relation of drawing. And I think we agree that you can make the same case on motherhood. Like we understand motherhood of having a sense of contingency between the sonness and motherness. So I think we can make the same case, but the problem is that in Latin America they're not going with the metaphysical stuff, so they're mostly debating on kind of like on a biblical historical basis, but it's useless. It's like so useless in what they bring. I'm not saying the Bible or history. I'm saying that the arguments are just terrible. Like I don't think they're dealing with the arguments at all. So I would say it's more like the reasoning is terrible rather than making a neurological case or a metaphysical case out of the Bible. That would be the right thing to do, as that's kind of like what I'm trying to do. I try to derive mereology from what I see Jesus claim to be the logos, to be to name the animals in the ark, to claim that it's the bread of life and stuff like that. So I would say I kind of draw mereology from that, as it is assumed that from other things about God's nature. I derive idealism, and from that, I guess I get my my idea of linguistics. And then from my idea of linguistics, I kind of refute their position. I think that's the right order. So yes, just start with the Bible, start with God, and then move into motherhood. And I think they're just doing the debate like totally wrong. And I don't think they're dealing with the metaphysics using the Bible correctly. So it's not that advanced. Like honestly, the debate right now in Latin America is terrible, and in the U.S. it's not even touched. Like no one even cares about that debate that we hear. But in Latin America is super 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 common, but it's super terrible too. So yeah, I just want to bring quality whenever I join the debate there in Latin America. So yeah, just want to see if we can give some feedback on that, but I guess we agree, right? Like,
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah,
As I said, I didn't even know that there was a debate, a metaphysical debate about, this issue. But yeah, I think it's just, I don't see the point. Uh, I don't think I see the point in these debates. Uh, yeah,
yeah, it's because it's a Marian dogma. So over there, they don't care about atheism versus Christianity like we care over here. Like that's all you see everywhere. What they care about apologetics over there is Catholicism versus Protestantism. That's all they care. And one Marian dogma of the Catholic Church is Mary, the Mother of God. Well, we would say Mary Theotokos, which we agree that's the word the Bible uses. The Bible uses Theotokos, which means God bearer. So yeah, of course we agree that Mary was bearing God in her pregnancy. So we agree with Mary God bearer. We just don't agree with Mary Mother of God, which is what the Marian dogma is trying to argue for. So I would say if we prove that is wrong, you'll be proving a dogma wrong, and a dogma is an ex cathedra teaching, like an official teaching of the Pope, and the Pope is infallible whenever dogmatizing something, whenever doing ex cathedra thing. So if we prove that the that saying Mary is the Mother of God as it was dogmatized, that we prove it that it is false, we will pretty much prove that the Pope is indeed fallible in his ex cathedra teachings, and we will pretty much prove Catholicism wrong just with that. So I'd say it got a lot of conversation. The problem is that I don't think philosophers are taking on the issue. It's more like theologians and maybe, mostly theologians, and I don't think they're doing a great job for not including metaphysics. But
yeah.
yeah, that's what's going on. And you have any closing thoughts?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say that besides this argument that I presented in the presentation, there's another powerful argument which I'm not going to discuss. I'll just mention it, which is called process ontology. It's like a kind of nihilism, but based on in the philosophy of science. So the idea is that there are no substances. Well, since you're an idealist, I don't know if that has anything to do. If it's any. If it's related or not to your view, but yeah, so it's called process ontology. It says that substances do not exist. All that exist are processes, subatomic processes. So instead of talking about subatomic particles, they'll talk about subatomic processes. So one example to put it into context. One example would be they will ask you, like, for example, you get into a room and they ask you, what do you see in the room? Uh, you see a bunch of things, right? Then they say, well, what if time stopped? There's no change. There's no time going on. Just you, but not anything in the room. What if time stopped? Are you seeing something? Do you still see stuff? Uh, well, if you take modern science or particle physics, for example, the research on particle physics, you you will find that you actually can't see anything if time stopped, because when the process of seeing something involves both that objects in themselves are moving, like for example, electrons are moving around the atom, the center of the atom, and in order for you to see even color, then first you have light that travels to the object, and when the light hits the object, then the light has to travel to your retinas and then interpreted by your brain. So when you actually see something, what's going on is a process. It's actually a process. It's and they say there are no substances. There are no things that have these processes. They're just processes. If anything, you would end up endorsing a kind of monism, which is that the universe itself is just the only substance there is, and everything else is just a property of the universe itself. So processes are just like properties of the universe. So there are no substances. That's a view that developed one professor of mine. He works in the philosophy of science, and he developed it as an argument against substances and as an argument against the common sense view that there are chairs and stuff like that. So yeah, there are a bunch of arguments against the common sense ontology. Just want to lay it out there.
No, that actually makes quite some sense. I would say that's compatible with idealism. At least it sounds compatible, but it's interesting. I mean, process would be a metaphysical thing. I don't think there's such thing as a process in a physicalist manner. You would say that it would emerge somehow from um, being pretty much a descriptive label that you give people some relationship. So they'll have to say something like that in order to make it work. So while in my sense, we would just say yes, processes exist because ideas and I'm an idealist, so makes sense. So yeah, that's super interesting. If you got some of that, some articles or something you want to share with me, yeah, send to me and I'll check it out because it actually sounds interesting. Maybe something I could use in the future. So yeah, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely, and that's like a very recent debate. And the paper, he wrote a paper. I don't think it's published yet, but he's already given presentations on the subject. So maybe I can send you a link. I know there's the you can find, if you look for process ontology, you'll find papers. But
Hmm.
the debate is new, and the idea that I put forward here came from that presentation from one of my professors. So I don't know if anybody has endorsed that kind of view, but I can send you a link as soon as I can find it, or if he published it already or something.
Well, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. That's definitely something I want to get into. So yeah, I guess it's a good time to close already at the 1 hour 35 minute mark.
Yeah,
But yeah, to everybody who's watching, thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys liked it. Subscribe to Apologist Assemble on YouTube, and yeah, we're gonna have we have a team of about 15 to 18 apologists. So we're a lot of guys, and so far you probably seen me in all of the videos so far. It's because I kind of involved in all that. So it's yeah, you might see me a little bit often, but hopefully other guys will take over and do videos on their own. Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of people here in Apologists Assemble and much more joining hopefully. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. It was super nice having you here, Felix. It was a very
yeah,
interesting
my pleasure.
conversation. Yeah, and I think we talked a lot of interesting topics, and yeah, hopefully people liked it. But thank you, Felix. It was super nice talking to you, and I'll see you guys next
All right.
time.
Thank you very much.